in the 21st century, Montessori for a better world for all. Oh, yeah. Like a light, you shine so bright into our lives. We love you forever and ever till the end. We celebrate you, Maria Montessori. We celebrate you, Maria Montessori. We celebrate you. Light was a shining path into our lives. Your passion for education has brought more light to the world, to all the children around the world. We love you, yes we do. You say, if a conservation and to come, they can only come from the children, for the children are the makers of men. These are your words. We celebrate you, Maria Montessori. We celebrate you, Maria Montessori. We celebrate you, extraordinary woman. Embrace in the 21st century, Montessori for a better world for all. Oh, yeah. Like a light, you shine so bright into our lives. We love you forever and ever till the end. We celebrate you, Maria Montessori. We celebrate you, Maria Montessori. We celebrate you. Life was a shining path into our lives. Your passion for education has brought more light to the world, to all the children around the world. We love you.
Thank you everyone so much. I hope you enjoyed that small welcome from the children. All of us from the Montessori Everywhere team are waving and welcoming you here. We're delighted to be in community with you all. Registered for this session are over 500 people from 66 countries, and this just warms our heart that we can drop all our affiliations and be together, working together as a Montessori community. So thank you for being here. For those of you who don't know anything about Montessori Everywhere, we started just last year in order to organize a celebration for Dr. Montessori's 150th birthday. And what was a one-day amazing event with over 6,000 people has now turned into a movement with these regular conversations. And this is the beginning of Connect Series 2021. So each quarter, we're going to jump into Zoom with hundreds of Montessori people. There's educators and schools and parents and families and really training organizations, anyone interested in the Montessori approach. And we're just so excited that you can join us. I wanted to start with a land acknowledgement as well. I'm calling in today from the Netherlands, and they have a past of perpetrating settler colonization, and I benefit from the wealth accrued by this land. I also grew up on the lands of the Camaragal people. They were the traditional landowners and a clan of the Ora tribe of Indigenous Australians who were united by a common language, strong ties of kinship, and survived as skilled hunter, fisher, gatherers. I benefited from the beautiful nature and resources of this land that they occupied before us. I also forgot to mention that my name is Simone Davis and I'm a member of the Montessori Everywhere team, and today's event is completely free. It's volunteer run to make it accessible to all of you. But if you are able to redistribute funds to the Black Montessori Education Fund, then they are our organization who we are supporting this school calendar year. So I will drop a link in the chat so you can think about that as well. So that's everything from me. I want to hand over to Wendelin now to give some quick housekeeping things, and then we'll get into our conversation. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Simone. Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, wherever you are in the world. This is so exciting to see all these people on our screen. I can't wait for it to get going. And so I will keep my message short. I'm Wendelin, also part of the Montessori Everywhere team, and I'm doing the tech support, and I'm trying to multitask at the moment, letting people into the meeting while I also run past you sort of the ground rules, if you like, for our session today. While we're having this main part of the session where the lovely Hannah will guide us and start us off, please can you keep your microphones on mute? That's simply so that your background noise doesn't interfere with what Hannah has to share with us. We are recording this, so I hope that's okay with everyone. If you don't want to be on our video or on our recording, then turn your cameras off, please. But we do ask actually that if you are comfortable with it, if you are happy please keep your camera on, particularly when we go into the breakout sessions, because you'll be talking in small groups, and it's so much easier to talk with each other when you can see each other. So if your background allows it, if your bandwidth allows it, and if you feel comfortable with it, please, we encourage you, particularly for the breakout sessions, to put your camera on. Another thing that we would really like to ask you to do, you can see that the Montessori Everywhere team has sort of put their role in their little thumbnail. Could you please change your name to include what age group of children you are working with? So if it's 0 to 6 or 0 to 3, 3 to 6, 6 to 12, 12 to 18, could you put that? So can you rename yourself and add that into your little title, because that just gives us an idea of who we're talking to. So I promised to keep it short, so I'll stop talking. I'm going to hand over to friend and colleague Hannah Bainham.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. My name is Hannah Bainham. My pronouns are she and her. And I am just so honored to be here and to be participating and helping you guide you through our discussion today on the child. Montessori Everywhere was definitely one of the best things that happened to me in the Montessori community last year. I really enjoyed the challenges that it presented, and I'm just so humbled to be here to connect with you and to create community with all of you today. I am a teacher educator. I am living in London, in the United Kingdom, and my years are 0 to 6. Great, I'm going to share my screen because I just got a few slides. It's kind of the way I think, is looking through pictures. So I hope that you will bear with me here. Great. So our look at the child, the reflections on the Montessori Everywhere's panel discussion on the child, which we had these beautiful panelists who really shared their knowledge. And today I'm just really going to be reflecting on that experience of listening and revisiting some of the things that they said, and create challenges for you to discuss in your breakout rooms. So this is little me at 3 years old, sitting in my grandmother's kitchen in Scotland. This is really, when we think about childhood, we really have to start with the child within us, the child that we once were, and how that shapes our experience and foundations in life. I know we as Montessorians all believe that those key ages is childhood, right? It really influences who we become. And so thinking about who that child is and who we were. So I'd like for you all to close your eyes. I want you to imagine yourself as a child. You can be any age. I want you to think, what does it really mean to follow that child, to follow you as a child? What influences us on the journey of following the child? Is it the environment? Is it the people? Is it our experiences in education? And what are the experiences we had in child that we have carried with us today? If you can open your eyes again, I want you to keep that child inside of you throughout our discussion today, and really think and reflect about what that means to you. Starting with this quote by Carl Jung: if there's anything we wish to change in the child, we should first examine it and see whether it's not something that could better be changed in ourselves. The spiritual preparation of the adults. I think that this is a key part of our journey as Montessori guides, thinking about how we understand childhood, how we have progressed in childhood, and what it means to really be a child. Again, this is me. As a child, I was someone who was very food driven. I loved foods, but I was also into role play and expressing myself. This is me on the right. I'm dressed up as the male. I used to dress up my brother as the bride often. And when I really think about that spiritual preparation, and when I really think about what it means to be an educator, a teacher educator, it is a huge work that we need to do. So we need to reflect on that childhood, those experiences that we've had in childhood, how we have become the person we are today, how our environment, our community, our families, our experience in education has changed us. This is something I really think about with my students. What does it mean to prepare yourself spiritually to be there for the children, right? And I think that often means unpacking some of our biases, unpacking some of our experiences, our traumas, and really think about what it means to be a child. What it meant to be a child back then, maybe. This was in the 80s, and what it means to be a child of today. And if we think about the child of today, we have no clue what their future looks like, right? We have no idea what they will encounter in the future. Think about everything, how the society has progressed since then. And it's really important to remember how we view the child, how we view that progression and think about that progression, and how we advocate for the child. I think that's the important part, is being an advocate for the child. So this, I love Aileen Wolf's Nurturing the Spirit. In order to love others, all of us must first love ourselves. The self-love is not to be confused with selfishness, which means over-concern with oneself without regard to others. A healthy self-love tells a child that she is a worthy person, unique in the universe, with special attributes and talents to contribute to the world. It does not say that she is better than anyone else. I really enjoyed the exploration of the child in the panel, and that first idea of movement that Dr. Laura Flores-Shaw talked about. That is such an important part of what it means to be a child, and it's the thing that sets us apart as Montessorians, is that idea of movement being such an integral part of our education, the hands being connected to the mind, and our movement being such an important part of how we encourage children to learn. So thinking about our environments now, do our environments allow for this? Thinking about our current situation, especially during this pandemic, a lot of children have been locked inside. I read recently that in the Philippines, children have been inside for 10 months, not even allowed outside out of the fear of spreading the coronavirus. And in Italy and Spain, there were times where children were also not allowed outside. So thinking about reflecting that importance of movement, especially that importance of movement now, that those gross motor skills, those fine motor skills, but how our brains are connected, like Dr. Laura said, our brains are connected to these movements, and our brains are purposeful in our movements. And I think that this is a really important part of childhood to think about. This is me, the little ballerina. When anyone asked me what I wanted to be when I grew up, it was a ballerina. Unfortunately, I'm not a ballerina, but I still love watching ballet, and I still love watching children dance, like we saw in the video before. Community. Tricia talked about the importance of community, and I thought this was such a beautiful sharing of how the Indigenous communities really value community, and perhaps how community has been maybe not as important in the Western experience of being a child. that idea of children are in the social aspects of life. Children are very social human beings. As part of those human tendencies we talk about, that gregariousness is such a key part of who we are. And think about how children are missing out on these communities right now, right? Children are often those who are not in school, those who are in that lockdown, and missing out from those social interactions. And I think when thinking about community, we really have to think about Montessori's ideas of cosmic education, right? She talked about that interconnectedness, the importance of seeing yourself as part of a bigger picture. She saw that idea of respect, right? We see that in the classroom, the respect of the environment, the care for the environment, but the respect for each other, the respect for the wider world. And we think about those ideas of responsibility, right? Responsibility for others, responsibility for the greater world, the environment, sustainability, but all of this is integral to what Montessori meant to be the citizens of the world, right? Children, each child is a unique part that will contribute to the world. And as our Western views on individuality maybe are seen in Montessori's writing herself, actually, I was reading a chapter about when she talked about that individual. And often I would say that maybe that doesn't recognize the value of the community in the same way the indigenous cultures have. And so I really enjoyed what Tricia was discussing about that indigenous view of community being such an integral part of education. We need to open our doors and really invite the community in and not just be that kind of individual silo there. Also, the community we create here by connecting and uniting together despite where we've trained, like Simone said, this is something I'm very passionate about. We all have a common interest as Montessorians. We're all very passionate about the work we do with children. And so it's about creating community by coming together and uniting together as one. Joy. This was a big part that I took from Gabrielle's section of the reflection of the panel, was that idea of childhood should really be joyful. And this is me with my little brother. My childhood was very, very joyful. There was lots of traveling, there was lots of laughter, there was lots of experiences. And I think my wish for children, no matter where they are, is that there is times of joy in the child. And I think thinking back again to that child that we imagined in the beginning, right? Think back to a time where you felt joy as a child, right? Where you really enjoyed something, that joy, that pleasure. For me, when I think about that joy, it's always when I was learning something new. When I learned how to read for the first time, how it opened up a world of imagination and fantasy for me. And that joy was such a big part of the joy that I wish to share with children, the joy I feel so privileged to be a part of when with my work with children. But here, as Gabrielle said so eloquently, joy needs to be nourished before concentration can happen, right? And so we want children to have a joy and a love for work, right? And I think that love and joy for work is such a big part of our job as educators to create an environment where there is a love and a joy for work. And here's where I'm going to challenge you a little bit. I know us as Montessorians, we really value that word work, that idea of work being a value in what the children are learning and doing in the classroom. But I would say that maybe work is not a word that is in our language that is not as valuable today as it was maybe back when Montessori was alive and developing this. If we think about work and young children, when they think about work, you know, when the times in their life when they hear work, it's mommy's going to work, daddy's going to work, or mommies or daddies are going to work, or grandpa's at work, or people are at work. And maybe that idea is linked with a negative connotation in today's world. So thinking about what examples they have of work, and maybe thinking about the language that we use with children, you know, is it say go choose work, or is it say go choose something you love, go choose something that brings you joy, right? Thinking about that language, reinventing our language, and really challenging, you know, what it means. I know work means something that's so beautiful with adults, right? We're seeing children's work, play as work, right? It's such an important part of what we do. But I also think that we need to rethink that word work. And I'm interested to hear what you think about in your discussions when we talk a little bit more about what it means to use work in the Montessori environment. Gabrielle also talked about that idea of, as an educator, we need to be someone worthy of a child's trust and admiration. And here is, again, is where I would like to challenge you. It's the adult who needs to do the work, right? We need to do the work in our spiritual preparation, in our development of our understanding of childhood, in the way we look and interact and embrace children, right? We need to be worthy to reflect and to prepare spiritually. And we need to heal those past traumas of childhood, of our experiences in education before we can really serve the child that we work with. That idea of a child's trust and admiration, and then they will obey, then they will listen to what you are saying, right? In your classrooms, are you someone that a child can trust and admire? Are you worthy of that? And that work really needs to be done by us as adults, as the guide, to really think about what is our cosmic plan, right? What is our journey as guides? How do we evolve? How do we continue to challenge ourselves, to progress, to learn alongside children? What is our plan? What makes us unique? How our past experiences in childhood have helped shape us, and thinking about how we can lead the children of tomorrow, right? How we can really work alongside the children of tomorrow. Our work with children and families and future teachers, it's important for us to be advocates, to listen, and to create an inclusive environment for all children and families, where everyone feels a sense of belonging and worth and trust. And when I think about some of these ideas, I always have to turn back to what Montessori said. And Andy, in a webinar I was with recently, pointed out this quote, and I just really love it. We find ourselves lost at this point in a place of contradictions. Only the child can light our path through it. The child is our only guide to what education should be. Only he can help us understand the complications of social life and man's unconsciousness and aspiration to be free. And that she said this in the Education for Peace. So in our breakout sessions, we've got some questions for you to think about with your community and developing your group in your community, thinking about that importance of childhood, right? So how successful would you say we are as societies, parents, and educators at accepting the child as they are? How can we get closer to seeing the child as they are rather than as what they are or what society tells us they are? So this is one of the questions we'll be looking at in our breakout groups. And the second one is, what is work in Montessori terms? So I really want to challenge you to think about, what does it mean to work in what Montessori says? Does it still apply? Does that language, does that vocabulary still work in today's classroom? Great. I think Wenzelin is going to break us out in groups.
I am going to, and I have, and you will have an invitation pop up on your screen, and just accept that invitation, and then you will be moved along into your breakout where your facilitator will meet you. So enjoy, and we'll come back here. You don't need to do anything to come back. At the end of the breakout session, just wait, and you'll join back into this main room. So enjoy.
So I hope that you all enjoyed your breakout rooms. I don't know, you can put it in for half an hour, for 45 minutes. It's never too long enough. But we're just going to take 2 minutes for reflection now, where in the chat box, what is something that you took away from your conversation today? So we'll just have 2 minutes for reflection. Well, thank you, everyone. You can keep dropping things into the chat, and I'll save the chat and we can share it as part of the recording. We didn't record the breakout sessions so that you could share, safely. And I now want to hand over to the facilitators of your groups to just give us a small summary of what you were discussing in your groups. So I see Barbara on my screen. Barbara, would you like to report back?
I will hand over to Samina, with whom I co-facilitated, as she's a wise soul.
Samina, do you want to unmute yourself?
Thank you, Barbara. We had a very, very lovely session, and I'm actually going to start from how we concluded, because it was a wonderful coming together of very united thoughts. And we closed with the thought that we all recognize that we are not perfect, but we are working towards that perfection. And it was reassuring that we had friends from different parts of the world who shared certain misconceptions on the part of parents as to how they look at Montessori education. And most of them felt that we do have a responsibility towards educating parents to respect their children, give them the freedom to choose, to grow in competence. And everyone has been talking about joy and work and changing the use of how we look at work from a child's perspective. As adults, many think that work is something mundane, but many of our speakers today have shared how important it is for the child to feel the joy in work. So we do need to let children choose something that they love, feel joyful. And we spoke also about purposeful activity and how it helps the child to grow and develop without value judgments. So self-construction and having enough time to explore, that was another very, very important activity. Understanding and how children like to actually contribute to what is happening in the family. It gives them a sense of self-esteem, a sense of belonging when they feel they are contributors, not only to the family, but to the wider community around them. Yes, some of our colleagues also mentioned how in their countries, there's still a lot of stress on children don't know how to do activities of practical life, but they are expected to start writing their names and things like that before they have done all that they need to construct themselves. And we need to remember that we are advocates of the child, and to work together with the parents so that they understand what the Montessori education is all about. And I would also like Barbara to add a little more to that.
Thank you very much. I think we need to let others have a say. Otherwise, we will say all the things that they wanted to say as well.
Sure.
From previous experiences, I know that this is so. The first person says most, and it goes less and less as you go round the robin.
Yes, please.
Gabriel, would you like to share from your group?
Yes, Simone, thank you. So we were in room 3, and it was so rich, it was hard to summarize it, really. One of the very important points that were raised is that who were trained or who are inside Montessori or who are in Montessori school, we understand a little bit more about children, and we are a little bit more able to understand them as they are. But we are especially more able to do that with younger children, we and larger community outside Montessori. And as children grow older, it's harder for us. So the need to advocate for those children and especially advocate for adolescents was an important point there. Another very interesting thing was about being more vocal about child development, respect for children, joy, all those things we talk so much about in Montessori. And that doesn't necessarily reach the wider community, parents and educators. And some people in our group talked about sending letters and talking with politicians and Congress people so that we can do that better. And we even received ideas for our Montessori Everywhere work, which I'll share with you later. Very interesting ideas for us. About work, about child doing work, we did agree that work is interesting. The word work is interesting because from one point of view, work is important and it's building something. And it was referred as building character, building self-esteem. And that maybe if children can feel that work goes together with love and joy, maybe when they grow up to be adults, they can carry that. They can carry that sensation and that joy and love for work together with them. Those were our contributions.
Thank you very much. And we're working on muting the dog in the background. I'm not sure why that doesn't work. Thank you so much. And I'm going to call on Christine and Heidi's group to share. Christine, would you like to speak for them?
So in addition to what has already been said, Barbara, you were right. Our group also kind of woven throughout our entire conversation was this idea of the impacts that culture is having on children. And when we have a classroom where there's a range of cultures, there's also, for instance, a range of ideas about work. So one of the people in our group talked about in the culture in which she's teaching, the families all have help who comes into the house. And that practical life work is considered to be less than because it's done by these other people. And so one of the questions that we had is how does that influence from culture give us an opportunity to look at practical life and practical life today? We also spent a lot of time talking about the importance of observation, and that because children are moving at their own pace, because of all of the influences from the pandemic, from working on computers, from whatever it is, it may be taking longer for children to engage and get that deep joy from concentration. And that our role as the guide is to give them that space. We are observing them so that we get a better idea of how we can guide them, but also letting them observe if they need to. Heidi?
I'm not going to add anything more. Thanks, Christine. That was great.
So we've got lots of lovely crossovers happening. And I'll call on Kate to see if there was anything from your group, Kate.
Hi. Our general sense was that we need to become worthy of the children, that we almost need to shift the narrative of education from the academics for parents and for educators and the curriculum that's in the class, and rather nurture these whole beings and the wholeness of the human. And also, we were really touched by Hannah saying, choose something that brings you joy, and that flip on the word work, that, you know, the term work is fine, but that joyful work, we all decided we need to go back and do research. We're all going to try that word shift and then see how it changes the environment. We also talked a lot about observing and how it is only through observation that we can see the child and know the child, and that important skill is sometimes undervalued in what we do in trying to get through all of our curriculum. So that was our idea, as well as the real important work that I feel and that we felt in our group of educating parents, that we can't close our doors anymore and say we're classroom guides. We are guiding the whole family and the families of our society. Thank you.
Wow, these conversations are amazing, and we get to keep doing it, but we'll get one last group's reflections. Can I see Stephen? Would you like to share?
Sure, happy to share. Great conversation. Thank you, guys. We talked about the image of childhood has changed through time and perhaps moved from obedient to independent, and that has brought some challenges because society has allowed these changes and more freedom is given to children, but this might mean that self-expression leads to disrespect. If we allow the children to really choose, they might not be choosing naturally respectful modes, and so that is perhaps a change in society. We saw the unfolding of the child that pushes the boundaries, and we accept that the guide's role is to maintain those boundaries, and still, even though they're more free and independent in society, perhaps we still need to maintain that respect, and that communication is a two-way street, and that we are modeling good behavior, so we need to respect the children as much as we expect respect from them. And I think that the idea of the child changing through time, or how society views the child, is very much to do with how adults see themselves, and that we actually need to step up, and if we're working with children, we need to be the best that we can be. We talked about work as necessary, and in terms of practical life, for example, caring for self and others, but it does have a negative perception, and as it's an imposed reality on a lot of adults. And if work is important for feeling good, and we need to rediscover that work is actually a positive thing, a contribution to your society, and a developing of self. Connection of a busy world and the undervaluing of human cosmic work has led to some children feeling a little lost and a little confused, and maybe the work of educators is to help them feel back in the center and respected again, as everyone deserves respect and love.
Thank you. And I know that so many of the other groups are DMing me saying, I want to share as well. So we will have to hold it there, because I'm going to hand over to Hannah, who's also going to give a global perspective from what she saw in all of the chat rooms as well.
Thank you, everyone. I really enjoyed going in and out of your chats and listening to the conversation in the community. Again, this is what the space is for, is really allowing us to have these conversations and to keep these conversations going. And I look forward to watching you throughout these different webinars where we have these discussions about the different facets of Montessori. It's very hard to summarize everything. I think you did it so beautifully, all of you who shared, the facilitators who shared, but there were some great ideas of the views of childhood. First, there was a lot of discussion about the parents' views of childhood, how there's high expectations on children of today, how some of these expectations can be seen as pressures on children and pressures on teachers to create a genuine environment, maybe a little more difficult in some cultures. But I think the key thing I found in this conversation is that we need to facilitate dialogue with parents. We need to have these conversations, include them in our conversations, and really create that community that we talked about in the panel, that idea of the community of not just shutting the doors and saying this is where it happens, right? Of having that dialogue and facilitating, not telling parents what they should do. My brother finds it very irritating when I tell him what he should be doing with my nephews. But when I facilitate the conversation, when I ask some open-ended questions, that's when the real learning happens. And that's when actually parents realize they already have the answers. One of the best compliments I've ever received during a parent session was, wow, you Montessori'd us. And I said, okay, what does that mean? He said, you showed us that we already have the answers, right? You guided us, but you didn't tell us what we needed to hear, which again, I think that's important when we talk to parents. And Simone, I know you're very good at that in your communication with parents through your books and everything. What is the child like with us, right? I heard some nice things about discussing childhood with the guides, and observation is that key part that we hold on to. That observation is so pure in really giving us the answers, to step back and really listen, right? To listen to what the children's needs are. And that's, again, not just listening to what they're saying, but watching their actions, watching their engagements in the environment, and really encouraging the children to love their time with us. And I loved from one of the conversations, they said, how do we give children what they need? And how can we do our best with them while they are with us, right? It's a gift to be with these children, and we have them for such a short amount of time. How can we do the best for them? And I think that was a beautiful way of looking at that. Wow, that work challenge, lots of dialogue there. And you know, that's what I love. I love when Montessorians either get very defensive about Montessori, or when they really analyze and they're critical and they really think about what that means. A lot of you said work is a positive term, and that work means to be productive. And I think that that's, again, beautiful, that product. But remember, when we think about that productiveness, we need to focus on the process of what the child is learning, not that product at the end. And I think that's what Montessori talks about us. And I think that's the difference between adults' work. Adults' work is very product-driven, whereas children's work is really about the process of learning, the process of work, the process of joy. We need to bring it forward to adulthood, right? I hopefully everyone on the screen loves what they do, right? That joy and that love for work. Not all of us have the pleasure of loving what we do, but we need to bring that positive focus of work to adulthood and find it as being wonderful and joyous and something to celebrate. We all need to have fun. I think that that's always important, and we need to see work as something that is active. Again, more conclusions. There was just so many beautiful things that were said, and just again in these summaries. I heard a lot of frustrations with remote learning and the challenges that we're facing now in the current situation, and how actually that has brought us closer to our work with parents, right? Parents have sometimes come into our classrooms now because we're doing work at home. So our attitudes and our work with parents, again, is key, is that communication. That idea of keeping this conversation going. In one group that we talked about a safe place for children. School needs to be a safe place for children, but also a safe place for the adults, for the guides, right? And that we need to see the child in front of us and before us, and that culture and that connection to work is key. And I think that culture is really important to think about. Again, there was that idea of being an advocate for a child, working together to really listen and to respond to children, right? And be an advocate protects their childhood as much as we can. And we aren't perfect. We're working towards this. And by all being here and contributing to this, you're working towards learning and growing. And I thank you for that. I want us to remind us again of that idea of Montessori's guide of cosmic education. I think sometimes it's even more important than some of those philosophical things that we talk about. It's that interconnectedness, that respect, that responsibility, and what it means to be a citizen of the world, right? That connection, that response, that one world, and that is where the peace of our society will come from. It's from the children, it's from that education. So I'm going to end by asking you to think about that 3-year-old child again. That was you, right? That 3-year-old child. I want you to close your eyes, and I want you to think, what would you tell that 3-year-old child, right? What would you hope that they would grow up to be? And I want to ask that 3-year-old child, who is me, who struggled in education, and traditional education let me down. And there was a lot of times where I didn't feel smart, and I didn't feel worthy, and I didn't feel that I would be a part of something so great. And so I want to tell that child that she will have an amazing life. She will be able to work alongside other children and guides and really promote and protect childhood and be an advocate for the things that she missed out on, that I really want to work towards to make sure that other children don't feel that way. But I really want to think about that child. Would she respect, admire, and trust who I am today? And can I be worthy of her? And I want to just leave you with that, right? That idea of, can we be worthy of the children in our classroom today? Thank you so much.
Wow. So there's so many comments of everyone just really appreciating this conversation and this space. Thank you all for being here. Thank you to our guide, Hannah, for those words of wisdom. We're all going to look at work in a completely different way, just with joy. Thank you to the panelists whose conversation we got to listen to that inspired this. Thank you to all the facilitators. And I didn't get to, some of them got to share your rooms in the chat when we didn't get to call on all of the rooms. There was a lot of work behind the scenes to make this all seem so effortlessly come together. So thank you to all of the Montessori Everywhere team who emailed people saying, can you please facilitate, and organizing all of the facilitator training. Thank you, Tammy and Andy, for that. And so much other work that went on. But let's continue the conversation. And so on Instagram and Facebook, we will post in the coming week, because we want to keep this conversation going. We'll be having, as I said, quarterly Connect sessions. So the next one is the 24th of April. Mark it on your calendars. And so you don't miss anything, make sure you sign up for our newsletter over at montessorieverywhere.org. One of the big projects that we're working on right now is with our continent correspondents, who are going to be interviewing Montessorians around the world. So we're going to be sharing voices. We're also at the moment brainstorming on how we can connect Montessori children around the world on a global climate change project. So we're ready to make Montessori more visible, to work together in this amazing global community. And we're really nothing without all you. We are just a Montessori global community, and we want to be part of it with you. So keep showing up, keep these conversations going, and we'll see you all next time. Bye, everyone. Feel free to unmute yourself if you want to say goodbye.
Sorry.
Bye. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. Gracias.
I learned a lot.
Dhanyawad.
I got lots of notes.
Thank you.
I love the notes, Lisa.
Okay.
Gracias.
Thank you.
Okay.
Oh,
there's a smiley face there.
Be safe, everybody. Wash your hands. Lave Au revoir.
Bye.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
See you in April.
See you in April.